Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Planning Subcommittee Heavy Woollen Area meeting, Thursday, the 27th of October, 2022. I'm Councillor Gwen Lowe and I will be chairing the meeting this afternoon. Please can I start off by asking all members to make sure your mobile phones are switched off or on silent and actually hidden away. There's no need for you to be using your mobile phones and being distracted throughout an important meeting like this. Thank you. And can I just thank members who attended the site visits this morning. I'm sure you agree they were extremely worthwhile attending. Membership of the committee is agenda item number 1. We're going to go around the room so you can introduce yourself. Unfortunately, the nameplates for councillors haven't arrived. So please could we go around the room and introduce ourselves. Councillor Hall, do you want to start, please?
Councillor Hall, funnily enough,
Yeah, remember to use your microphones, folks, please.
I'm still Steve L from Etman Dwight.
Councillor Pervez, Dewsbury West.
Councillor Dadd, Dewsbury South.
Councillor Adam Gregg, I represent the Lindley ward. Thank you.
Councillor Sheard, Burslem, Birkinshaw.
Councillor Stephen, Liversidge and Gummersall.
Councillor Alex Lucas, Dewsbury East.
Councillor Andrew Pinnock, Cleckheaton.
And Councillor John Lawson, Cleckheaton.
Thank you. And again, I'm Councillor Gwen Lowe and I represent Batley West Ward. Also, when it comes to members of the public speaking, the timer hasn't turned up either. That's obviously somewhere with the nameplates. So we are going to improvise, so please do bear with us when it comes to public speaking. Members of the public, you have 3 minutes, and any councillors, you will get 5 minutes, and we will give you a 30-second warning when it comes to it. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we have some apologies for this afternoon. Thank you.
So we've received apologies from Councillor Jackie Ramsey and Councillor Fazila Lunat, and Councillor Anwar has given apologies for being late.
Thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda is minutes of the previous meeting. Can I just say that I actually sent my apologies to that meeting, but my apologies aren't noted, but it does say that Councillor Hall did chair the meeting during my absence. So please can you make sure that my apologies are added. And thank you, Councillor Hall, for sitting in the hot seat. Much appreciated. Thank you. Can we agree those then now as a true record? Thank you. Item number 3 is declaration of interest and lobbying. Again, can we go around the room?
Non-chair.
Sorry. Item 10 and 11.
Yeah, can I just go back on Councillor Hall saying none? Everyone actually received lobbying from on planning application 222/90175. Everybody was emailed. I know some of you might have not seen it, but everybody was emailed on that one.
Item 10, 11 and 12, no advice given.
Item 10, 11 and 12, no advice given. And can I just say, I have got my phone out because my daughter's had an accident at nursery, so I'm just waiting for an update to make sure she's okay.
Item 10, no advice given. Thank you.
Item 10, no advice given.
Again, item 10, no advice given.
Item 10, no advice given.
Items 10 and 11 noted.
The same, items 10 and 11. Noted.
Thank you. I've gone different. I've gone page number 9. No action or advice given. And page 45, I was lobbied and I did pass the information on to planning officers for advice on that one. Thank you. Please can you make sure that you do complete the declaration of interest form in your pack as well and hand it in before you leave the meeting. Item number 4, admission of the public. Everything okay for that one?
Yeah, all
Yeah.
items in public session.
Lovely, thank you. Item number 5, deputations and petitions.
No deputations or petitions, Chair.
Thank you. Item 6, public question time.
No public questions.
And then items 7, 8 and 9. They were the site visits carried out this morning. Thank you again for those who were able to attend. So we'll now move on to the actual planning applications. Please can I just start by saying thank you to officers for the excellent reports that we have received on the planning applications today. Well done, thank you. Okay, so agenda item 10, planning application 2022/90175, erection of 4 stables / tack room and equestrian use of land north of Stocksmore Road, Stocksmore, Huddersfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Alice Downham and I'm the case officer for this application. The application is for erection of 4 stables and tack room and equestrian use of land at land north of Stocksmore Road, Stocksmore, Huddersfield. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Bill Armour. The reasons for the request are set out in the committee report. The application has also received a significant number of representations, 34 in total. The application site is a parcel of land to the north of Stocksmore Road, shown on screen here. The site is located within the green belt. On screen is a site plan from a similar application which was refused in September 2021 on the grounds of inappropriate development in the green belt. The proposed 6 stables and a tack room with parking for 4 vehicles and an access track. This proposed 6 stables and a tack room with parking for 4 vehicles and an access track. This would have been located closer to the hamlet of Whitestones and would have been accessed from the existing eastern field entrance. On screen is a site plan submitted with the current application. Members will note that, compared to the previously refused application, the proposed stables have been relocated further from Whitestones, accessed from the existing western field entrance. Furthermore, the number of stables has been reduced from 6 to 4 with tack room, and the amount of hard standing has been significantly reduced compared to the previously refused application. The red line boundary has also been reduced. In terms of the principle of development, local and national planning policy state that stables can be an appropriate form of development in the Greenbelt, subject to the proposal being of reasonable scale and unobtrusively designed and located. As set out in detail in the committee report, officers consider that the size and number of stables is acceptable, as well as the design and location. Should members be minded to approve, it is recommended to include a condition restricting the stables to private use. On screen is a closer look at the proposed site plan. An area of hard standing has been added here for waste storage. However, should members be minded to approve, it is recommended to include a condition requiring submission and approval of a waste management plan. Highways Development Management have no objections to the proposal. An area of grasscrete has been added here to ensure no stone chippings from the yard area are dragged onto the highway. Furthermore, Highways officers consider that visibility is acceptable, although it is recommended to add a condition to secure visibility should members be minded to approve. Given the distance to the nearest dwellings, officers consider that there would be no detrimental impact on residential amenity as a result of the proposal. The representations received raise concerns on a number of matters which have been outlined and addressed in the committee report. In conclusion, the proposal has been assessed against all relevant local and national planning policies, taking into account the representations received. For the reasons outlined fully in the committee report, the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to public speakers. First speaker I have is Liz Turner. Liz, you've got 3 minutes to speak when I will give you a 30-second warning. When we get 30 seconds left, okay. Please bear with us, we are improvising with the time. You have 3 minutes starting now. Thank you.
Previous application rejected, and I quote, "The application fails the test of appropriateness in the Greenbelt, and there are no amendments that overcome this fundamental issue relating to the principle of development. It would cause further harm to the spatial and visual openness of the Greenbelt. The current application has been moved up the same field, yes, reduced in size, road and parking removed, but surely these are amendments. The fact that planning now seem minded to accept, I fail to understand. The spatial and visual openness will still be affected. Policy LP 56, the scale of facility is no more than is reasonably required. The application states personal use. This seems a somewhat large scale for personal use. The hard build of these stables is still a departure from policy LP 56, which states that the proposal should be for ready-made stables of timber construction and be appropriately and unobtrusively sited. The use of more permanent materials should be resisted, as this can result in a proliferation of permanent structures to the detriment of the open character of the landscape should the use of the sable cease. The site and built form would cause urban sprawl. The applicant has sold many buildings off for housing, at which time planning said no further buildings would be allowed as replacements. Isn't this exactly what he is now doing? The removal of car parking is now replaced with heart standing for manure storage, not apparently needed on previous application. Is this really necessary? Please see photo provided. This was accumulated in just a few months. The location for this is close to the only the pavement in and out of village, causing nuisance by smell and flies. The resiting is just a disaster waiting to happen. Whilst yes, the field does have a gate at this point, it is, as the applicant well knows, never been used because of the back placement on the road. Manoeuvring a vehicle into the field is nigh on impossible because of the bend and de-restricted road
30
on which it is. Furthermore, the removal of on-site parking in this application will compound the problem. When the horses are visited to feed water and presumably ride, all this crisscrossing a well-used small pavement, I can only assume that highways haven't visited the site, as the previous application certainly caused comment re-access and exiting. This doesn't seem right. Please, in the interest of protecting the Greenbelt and safety, reject this application.
Thank you. I'm sorry that there isn't a clock for you to be able to see. When time is running out, I do apologise. Thank you. Our next speaker is Andrew Hutchinson. Again, Andrew, you've got 3 minutes and I'll give you a 30-second warning at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time starts now.
I'll try not to repeat some of the things that Liz has already said, but I can reiterate all of her comments and agree with them completely. A couple of additional things that I wanted to add to that in relation to the previous applications in the area. There was an application rejected, albeit retrospectively, for a tennis court in the adjacent field for leisure purposes. Rightly, it was rejected in my opinion, but I don't see any great difference in terms of the natural aspect and the surrounding countryside that it would damage in terms of the visual impairment. And more recently, there was an application for a storage area for agricultural purposes, very close to the site. Again, that was rejected on the same grounds, and I think that's very relevant. Just to reiterate Liz's point that the land and buildings were owned by the applicant a number of years ago. He sold all of those buildings that would have been ideal for stable use, and made profit from the residential purpose that they're now intended for, to then ask for that to be taken back and start building new buildings, I think is wholly inappropriate. And then the final thing that's not been covered by anybody, but if you did the site visit, perhaps you were lucky enough to see the badgers. I walk my dog most mornings, most evenings. There are badgers in the area for certain. Difficult to say exactly where they're coming from, but there are badger sets in and around that area, and I'm really concerned that any building work would have a detrimental impact on their livelihood and their surrounding area. The final thing in relation to highways, again, just to make the point, I live closest to that bend. It's a dangerous bend. I have young children and a dog. We don't let them out. So for highways to suggest that it's an acceptable area for an entrance to be added, I think is wholly wrong and inappropriate. It's a dangerous bend. There's little or no pavement. We have cars parking around us on a regular basis. People come and enjoy the area, enjoy the countryside, walk the dog. You've seen from the photographs, it's a beautiful part of the world, and to try and suggest that it has no impact on the highway is in my opinion, ludicrous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Armour, please. As a councillor, you're entitled to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
And again, I'll give you a 30-second warning. Your time starts now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm opposed to the application, the sincerity of which I doubt. I remain of the view that the proposed breeze block walls are out of character for a stable in this type of area, and indeed are contrary to policy. I note that there have been several amendments to this application since I first asked for it to come here, and since I lodged my objection to the application. In particular, the footprint of the proposed stables, both as a whole and in respect to the individual stalls, has been reduced significantly, and the original proposed tarmac area has been replaced with grass screed, a less intrusive material, both of which amendments I welcome. There is now, although the position is not made entirely clear in the documents, a statement regarding the removal of soiled stable bedding. Again, this is an improvement on the original application. These changes, which appear largely to be in response to my earlier objections, notwithstanding, I am still not persuaded that this application should be supported. There is some supposed clarification in the officer report about ownership of the red and blue areas, but it remains unclear as to whether the larger blue line area, to be used for grazing and exercising of horses, is owned by the applicant. To the contrary, the certificate of land ownership clearly indicates that the applicant does not own all of the land associated with the application. Should the applicant not in fact retain ownership or rights of use over this area, then the application would not provide sufficient space for horses to be kept safely and humanely in the proposed stables, because of the lack of sufficient grazing and exercise land. In its own terms, the application is not sustainable and should be refused on that ground. I note and approve of the statement in the application form that this proposal does not include any car parking spaces. This is important to retain the character of the greenbelt. I also note the applicant, for whose personal use the application is supposedly made, does not live within walking distance of the proposed stables. The inescapable conclusion is that the only alternative is for roadside parking on Stocksmoor Road, a narrow country lane subject to a 60 mph speed limit. I note and endorse the road safety objections raised by the parish councillors for the area, and add my own observation that roadside parking here would excuse me, but both be a road safety hazard of itself and would also add to the hazards identified by the parish councillors. I regret that the Highways report does not address the serious matter of road safety here. I request that the committee either refuse the application on road safety grounds or impose a condition to prevent on-road parking associated with the application. I note and approve the proposed conditions and condition 3, that stables solely for private use and not for commercial purposes. I request that committee clarifies and strengthens this by adding specifically that the stables or individual stalls are not to be used by third parties. This would reinforce statements in the application documents and appears to be in line with the wishes of the applicant. I note the proposed condition 5 regarding waste management strategy, but urge that this should be strengthened, specifically by a requirement that the applicant produce satisfactory documentary evidence of contractual arrangements to dispose of waste before development commences. To sum up, Chair, I urge committee to refuse the application on the grounds that the proposed use is not sustainable development, but because of the breeze block structure it's contrary to policy, and also that the application would introduce unacceptable hazards for users of Stocksmoor Road. Should committee be minded to approve the application, I request that the proposed conditions be amended to include the applicant to furnish
30 seconds, please.
The applicant to furnish written evidence of permitted use of the Blue Line area for equestrian activities and grazing, prohibition on parking by users of the stables on Stocksmoor Road in the vicinity of the development, require acceptable evidence of a contract to deal with waste disposal prior to the development starting, and to state clearly that third-party use of the stables or part thereof is not to be permitted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. And I've got Councillor John Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Again, you've got 5 minutes and I'll give
I
you 30
hopefully
seconds.
won't take the full 5 minutes.
Time starts now.
Thank you. I've come before you to support my colleague in speaking against this application. My concerns are about the usage and the proposed long-term usage of this site. As my colleague has already outlined, there is no parking provided on site. The applicant doesn't live within walking distance of the site, and it's not clear that they actually own the grazing land adjacent to this. So I do worry what will happen with the horses, because if they therefore are talking about walking the horses off site to take them somewhere for grazing, or if they're riding them, this is a dangerous bend. Those that live locally and represent this area understand the speed that the traffic comes round here. It is a very narrow pavement, but that pavement is going to have to be accessed by anything that comes onto the site or off the site, be that horses or vehicles. There will be a need for parking somewhere at some point. If they don't have access to the grazing land, presumably there's going to be horse boxes as well as cars that are trying to park here, and there's no provision for that. I also have concerns around the removal of the waste and how that will be managed. And again, that's going to need vehicle access, because it's going to have to be taken away in some way. I also share the deep concerns with non-compliance with policy LP56 around the use of breeze box. I do not understand why there is a need to use that kind of construction in this area when all of the other stables in rural parts of my ward like this would ordinarily just be of wood construction, so that when they're no longer needed, they can be removed and the land is returned to its previous state. I'll leave it at that, Chair, if I may. I think my colleagues made the points adequately, and I'm just here really to support that and ask that committee refuse this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We just need to switch the public speaker microphone off. Thank you very much. You've got a job. Straight. I'll now open this up to members of the committee. If anybody would like to start. Councillor Lukic, please.
Thank you, Chair. Normally, I've only really got one thing to ask about. I think I've got 2 or 3 things to ask about here. The site visit was really valuable. Obviously, absolutely beautiful spots, and understand concerns over any development there. But obviously, we've got an application in front of us and have to consider that and not stray much into hypotheticals. However, I would like to ask about materials, because LP56 is definitely aimed towards, and I quote, avoiding proliferations of permanent structures in the green belt. And obviously, if you've got breeze block to a certain height and then cladding with timber, it will visually appear from the outside the same as if it was just a timber structure. But the breeze block, obviously, the exterior walls and also internally, as partitions between the stables is an element of a permanent structure. So I'd like to ask if the breeze blocks, when we actually consider those, if they do potentially run counter to the aims of LP 56. The points raised about future use of the land, and this kind of links with the private use condition. In terms of that private use condition, how would that operate if the land was divided in future and was in multiple ownership? Because I think that's what some of these are getting at in some of the representations we've just heard. And theoretically, could the proposed stables, the land that those sit on, be divided from the rest of the grazing land, and then access be prevented in future? And if so, does that actually, does the condition account for that possibility? And what would happen to the stables in that instance? I think that's all I need to ask for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Would officers like to come in and respond to those comments?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So your first point on materials and LP 56, I just refer members to paragraph 10.10 of the committee report. So it has been considered that the materials are acceptable and the breeze block at the lower level, because it's durable, helps the stables remain cool and mitigate some of the sound. However, if members were consider this to be an inappropriate material, we could have a suggested condition that the entire structure is clad in timber. In terms of your point on the future use and the private use, if it were to be, shall we say, split up, etc., the condition goes with the land, and if there was going to be a further intensification, that goes against the premise of that condition, that it's against that it's for private use and not commercial use. So say, for example, if they were to rent out the 4 stables to 4 different parties, that's not for a private use, so that would be in contravention of the condition, and therefore it would be not in compliance with what's been approved. So there would be that mechanism and that security to yourself as members and to members and objectors and Councillor Armour and Councillor Taylor in terms of that intensification. So the condition goes with the planning permission, it goes with the land. If they were to rent out, that would be against the premise of that condition, and therefore they would be in contrary of that condition, and enforcement action could be taken in that regard. The other matter that we could look to do if members were minded to approve is if the, say for example with the LP 56 and the impact on the Greenbelt, if the structures were no longer used for a stable, we could have that, we could put an additional condition on, and if members would find that appropriate, setting out that if it's no longer in use for, say, 6 months, they would have to distinguish that use and all structures and engineering works to be demolished. I think I've covered all points there, but do let me know if not.
Seeing as it's you.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible, in terms of the wording of the condition, such that if the grazing land adjacent to the stable was no longer available to the owner of the stable, that then the structure would be pulled down? Yeah. Okay.
The difficulty with that is it's not in the red line, so you can't control any land that's outside the red line, any condition, so I would say that wouldn't meet the tests in terms of the 6 tests for planning conditions.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Councillor Gregg, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to pick up on something that's on page 18, 10.9 under the highways issues. Looks like obviously highways have looked at this, and there's actually reference on one of the subsequent pages from one of the parish councillors, Councillor Cooper, who I believe might also be a Kirklees Council, but I'm not sure if it's the same one, that this is an area where you've got a lot of conflict between drivers, potentially because you've got tractors, and it is a unrestricted road because it is a fast road. I know the road quite well. Unfortunately, when we were on the site visit, nobody came down there at breakneck speeds like they often do. And what my question is, if the Highways Authority is advocating nothing should be above a metre within within an indent of the actual road, surely if you've got vehicles parking on that road, that is a genuine concern for safety. Doesn't that contradict itself, the fact that you're saying you don't want a structure over a metre high, but you've got potentially horse boxes, cars on the road that would potentially be over that height anyway?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So Highways Development Management haven't objected to the scheme, but what I shall do is I'll defer to my colleague Ryan, who's our highways expert, who'll be able to answer your questions.
Through you, Chair. Ryan Kinder, Highway Development Management. It is envisaged that vehicles visiting the site will be actually going into the yard itself. There's 8 metres to the front and then 8 metres down the side, which is about 57 square metres. So there's sufficient room to get 2 vehicles in and out and turn round. It is acknowledged that if they come with the horsebacks, they will have to reverse into the yard. But given it's for private use, it's going to be limited because the idea is that they're going to be there all the time. So that manoeuvre will be kept to a minimum. I think that covers it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg, are you okay with that?
Can I just very briefly, there's just a couple of queries I've got on enforcement, because I think it was Councillor Armour mentioned that if, for example, there was a restriction put on parking on the road, maybe that would alleviate some concerns, but I'm not so sure how that could be enforced. If there was, for example, like you've said, a situation where there weren't vehicles going into the yard, they were actually just parking on the roadside, because I believe the access doesn't appear to be great. If it didn't materialise how the Kirklees Council Highways officers envisage it, and ultimately we have problems on the road and we have near misses and skirmishes outside with vehicles, ultimately how does that be enforced? For example, if there is a restriction on parking outside?
Waiting restrictions come with a separate legal process, which can raise objections itself, so it wouldn't be appropriate for this particular development to provide waiting restrictions. Again, it's common sense, blocking the highway. The idea is that they would actually park off the road, and that's what we're running with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have Councillor Pinnock, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I acknowledge the officer's recommendation for this application, but there's a couple of questions I feel I need to ask, because it immediately struck me when we visited the site how narrow the entrance is and whether there is room on the site to turn a vehicle with a trailer, which could, well, it's not very unlikely that it is likely that at some point a vehicle with a trailer will need to turn. The idea of reversing out with a trailer doesn't sound like a very good idea, really. And I just wonder whether there is actually room to turn a trailer on the site, given that part of the land that isn't the stable is being given over to a somewhere to have a dung heap, in effect. It just strikes me that the site is too small for what is being, the red line boundary is too small for things that perhaps even for personal use may need to be done on that site. I'd just like some guidance on that, because otherwise I can can see a lot in favour of the application. But if it isn't actually going to work practically, and if it's going to cause an obstruction while somebody is trying to get into the site on a road which has just got national speed limit on it, then why should we be giving permission for that, is the thought that's going through my mind.
Thank you. Can we take advice on that?
The width of the existing access is circa 3.5 metres, and that's considered sufficient for vehicles to move in and out. It is an on-balance recommendation from Highways to bear in mind, so on that basis we've accepted that the current width is acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in as well. Just to sort of just make members aware of the red line, and you know, in terms of ensuring that that's as tight as possible when it comes to Greenbelt. So it's just to keep that in mind in terms of if you're widening something, it would all have to be in the red line, and the red line has been drawn tight for a reason, because of the previous reason for refusal.
But the point I was trying to make was, is there enough room to turn a vehicle with a trailer on the site? That's because the idea of either backing out of the site onto the road or backing into the site seems just unnecessarily awkward, and I you know, in a certain sense negates the whole idea of having it there. You're just making it awkward for yourself rather than you know, being useful.
As previously answered the question that was raised, it is acknowledged that they would have to reverse in and out of the site with a trailer, so I'll leave that one with you.
Any more comments? Councillor Pervase, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted you to clarify the surrounding land where the blue line is. Does that belong to the applicant or does it belong to somebody else?
Just to confirm, it's in the blue line, so anything in the blue line is in the ownership of the applicant, and the red line as well also. Certificate B has been signed as well. Is that correct, Alice?
Yeah, could you put that picture back on, please?
We're just going to bring it back up for you to clarify. Yeah. So we're just trying to find that we're just locating the plan at the moment, but and so it's page 20 in terms of clarity being sought from the agent in terms of the red and blue line ownership, and forms have been submitted with the application that is part of the application, and it is recommended that the stables are personal use and that all relevant ownership certificates have been signed and submitted with the planning application.
Suddenly more hands went up. Councillor Gregg again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think what would be really helpful, just for clarity, is this applicant putting an application in for stables in an area where they don't own the fields surrounding it, because ultimately that is going to cause problems with trailers. It just doesn't, it defies logic actually that would happen, in my opinion. So that, for my benefit, I'd like to know, do they own the surrounding lands or not in terms of the fields around this stable block? Because ultimately, if there's nowhere for horses to graze, they're going to have to be moved in trailers, which causes more issues on the highway. Just really wanted clarity on that, if that's possible. I appreciate it might be a tricky one to answer.
I'm sure somebody will try and answer
it. It is a tricky one because ownership is it's somewhat of not a planning matter in terms of for the consideration of a planning application. You've got your red line, and it's more of a technical matter in terms of ensuring that the ownership certificates have been submitted. We take that on the we take what the applicant gives us. There's no requirement for us to double check ownership, etc. And we assess the planning application against the red line, and that's where I'm struggling to sort of provide as much comfort as I can, because all I can say is that when you're assessing a planning application, the relevance is the red line. Ownership is for a matter of the applicant to provide us, for a matter of the legalities of the application form, etc., and notices that those that own the land, because anyone can put in a planning application, they don't have to own the site, but they need to make sure that they are notifying the appropriate owners. So that's where it gets slightly more complicated, because one, we can't have an application that's subjecting a condition onto anything outside the red line. You have to assess it against the red line of the application.
No, thank you. And I don't want to stop anybody else from speaking, obviously. I just wanted to say that as there are a lot of questions left unanswered, but there's nobody here from the applicant to answer those questions or put their case forward. From my point of view, there's a lot of unanswered questions with this application, and I'd be minded to propose refusal. As I say, I appreciate that other people want to speak.
Through you, Chair, I'd like to come in. What would you be refusing on? And because we've got to think about the red line and what I've just mentioned two seconds ago. The committee would have the opportunity to defer, but again, the relevance to the planning decision, that's where I'm struggling, and members will just have to be really clear on, one, what you're refusing it on or what you're deferring it for.
Sure, I get that. I think on the refusal terms, and again I'd have to defer to your advice on this, with regards to highway safety, referring it back to the point on page 19 where it was regarded as it wasn't going to be acceptable for something over 1 metre, I think it was, to be actually on the highway periphery. So surely if you've got a horse box or a trailer, that is going to be over 1 metre. So again, I think if it couldn't be refused, deferring it would obviously maybe be an opportunity to clear up those issues, but I certainly wouldn't be minded to approve based on the questions that have been raised.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Just again, be very clear on what you're deferring it for on the basis of what I've previously said. It was an on-balance decision, and highways officers have been to the site and have assessed that on balance it's acceptable, but if councillors are minded to not consider that to be appropriate, it's whether we can ensure that that's an evidence-based, defendable refusal. That's what I'm just trying to make clear on in terms of for the members, but that's entirely up to yourself as committee members.
Thank you. Can I just say, while you were speaking, I did scribble defer down. So, but I have got some more speakers, so obviously there's still a lot more questions. Councillor Lukic again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very much concerned that the stable may not in future have access to grazing land, which would cause highways problems with intensification of vehicles and trailers and so on. And I want to be absolutely sure about the position of conditions or other means of ensuring adequate grazing land surrounding the proposed stables, because I think that is relevant to the development. So I'm not sure why that couldn't be applied as a condition to the development, even though the grazing land is not within the red line. The condition that grazing land has to be available immediately by the stables is still relevant to the development. This is getting into legal murky waters, but I don't see why it would be an unreasonable condition, or not pass the 6 tests. But
through you, Chair. Sorry. No, I'll go back to the point of the red line in terms of that is the application that's in front of us. If members were to consider that tipped it in the balance of being unacceptable in terms of not having grazing land, etc. However, you can have a set of stables that has grazing land outside, but it's conditioning that I'm slightly nervous about for the committee. And if you feel that tips it in the balance, then that's really on the onus of members to make that decision.
I've got Councillor Pinnock. Did you indicate you wanted to speak again? Sorry, no. Right, I've got Councillor Lawson then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I count so far that we have a minimum of 5 further conditions to add to what's on the report. And I think I'm just a bit concerned that we're designing something on the hoof, as it were, in the committee. No pun intended. But it seems to me that there's a lot of unresolved issues here. So we're looking at, so what I count is the waste management, the highways visibility. I can't read my own writing with that one. The construction and the reinstatement to the site within 6 months of it not being used. Then there is, to my mind, the land falls away from that gateway. So there is an uphill, and during the winter I can see some real issues with getting back up that hill. So there is a kind of how vehicles are going to actually access and egress that site safely. I get that actually there is no parking of TROs along that stretch of road. And there is nothing how do we differentiate between somebody who parks up there for a ramble and somebody who uses it to access to the site? So to my mind, that lack of clarity there would need resolving before I could accept this. So I think I would move that we defer this for that clarity. One is to say, can we have all these conditions in view at once? And can we have a little bit more clarity on just what's going to happen with the highways? I think that would be where I'd want to vote if, I don't know if anybody wants to second that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch on something that was mentioned by one of the speakers about a previous application being refused either because of or partly because of the access and the exiting of the site. Can I just ask for some clarification on whether that's the case, and is it now not an issue because the site's been moved? I'm not sure.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The previous planning application in 2021 was not refused on highways form. It was to do with the access track would introduce a prominent urban element into the countryside, and it's about the spatial and visual openness on the green belt through its belt form and associated access and parking. So there wasn't a highway safety reason for refusal. It was about the size, the scale, and the impact both spatial and visually on the openness of the green belt.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hall, please.
Just ask my question.
Unless you've got a superb driver to get presumably a Chelsea tractor and a trailer in and out of that area, you're going to have some serious problems. And if somebody's tearing down that road or up it at 60 mile an hour, I can see there being some really bad problems. I'd like to defer it because, to be honest with you, I'm not right keen on the plan, the layout. So I don't think the gateway is wide enough to get a car and a trailer in easily, because it isn't. So I'd go for a deferral. I'm looking at the layout. I'm not bothered about the dung heap at all. I'm sure a lot of that will disappear by people going and helping themselves to or smoke, but I do see that highways issues are quite a problem.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. So I've had Councillor Gregg mention deferral. I've mentioned deferral. Councillor Lawson, did you actually want to move deferral? And Councillor Hall has also mentioned deferral.
Can I just...
Do you want to come back in?
I just want to just clarify what the defer, so we are clear as officers what we're being requested to defer for.
So what I was moving was that we had all of the conditions in view that have been mentioned today, so that we could be absolutely clear what we're voting on. And the other was to see if we can investigate how we can best arrange the access to and from the site without resorting, or without the applicant or the user having to resort to parking on the highway, and what arrangements the applicant is likely to make.
Sorry. No, I just want to make sure that we're completely clear. So there's a suggested list. I've got the point on the highways, but deferring for all conditions. So we've got the 5 conditions on page 21, and then we had about the six months once it's been made redundant. Is there any other conditions that are being suggested that we are to look at when we're deferring that you would wish in front of members for next committee?
Well, I think we talked about the construction, and the thought that that should be really timber, full timber. Even if it's double clad, then it should be easier to reinstate to its green belt status. We had the highways visibility one that's already in there, and I think the other 3 are already in there, aren't they? The waste management. And I still can't read my writing there. There's the other one that's already in there as well. Okay.
Thank you. Can I bring Councillor Pinnett back in, and then I've got Councillor Lukic as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have another condition that ought to be considered, and that is whether this development should be personal, whether we should name the individual. You know, that can be done, or that has been done in a number of cases, or at the very least, the condition says this application is for the applicant only, or his family. I think that needs to be considered as part of our deferral scheme.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be clear that planning permission goes with the land. So if you are naming an individual, is that enforceable, and it doesn't meet the relevant test. So it's just to be really clear, if we're making it a personal decision, the planning permission goes with the land, and there's no associated dwelling with the site, if that makes sense. So just be really clear. And as I say, I'm not entirely clear that condition would meet the test.
Could the condition be worded so that if the ownership of the land, because we have been told that the applicant owns the land on which the stables are intended to be built, and also the Blue Line land as well, so that the condition would say that if that changes, then you'd need to have a separate permission.
Thank you, Chair. What I would suggest is that we consider that condition and outline the risks to members for next committee if councillors are minded to defer.
Thank you. Councillor Lukic, please.
Thank you, Chair. And link that, just to clarify, when we're talking about the land, runs with ownership of the land, in this case we're only talking about the stables land. We're not talking about the grazing land. And so when deferring, it would be helpful to know if a condition can be worded to relate to ownership of the grazing land or not. Just if that's an option by the time it next comes to consider. Apart from that, I would like to second Councillor Lawson's motion to defer this application for the reasons stated.
Do you want to come back in on that?
No, I just want to clarify, we can outline the risks to members in terms of that.
Thank you very much. So just for transparency, can I ask who is moving to defer and who's seconding to defer, please? Councillor Lawson, moving deferral.
Yes, Chair.
And seconded by?
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Lukic. Is everybody happy to move to the vote on that? Would you like to kindly go around? Thank you.
I'll do this in alphabetical order. So voting on deferral for the reasons given. Councillor Dadd?
For deferral.
Councillor Gregg?
For deferral.
Councillor Hall?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Lukic?
For.
Councillor Pervez?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Sheard?
For.
Councillor Stephen?
For.
Councillor Lowe?
For deferral.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Can I just say thank you to officers for answering questions. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. So just 1 minute while planning officers swap the hot seats. Thank you. Thank you, members. So we'll now move on to agenda item number 11, planning application 2022/91176, erection of workshop / storage building, the Upstone Yard, near Bank, Shelley, Huddersfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sarah Longbottom and I'm Deputy Team Leader within Development Management. The application site is a rectangular piece of land located off Near Bank, Shelley, which members visited this morning. It forms approximately half of a wider area of land which was granted planning permission for the change of use from stone yard to log storage yard in 2018. The site is located within the Greenbelt and recently been cleared, although the northern part of the site now contains a recently constructed industrial unit with parking and turning provision to the rear and vehicular access to one side. And this is the subject of the current application before members. Just zoom it on, zoom out. Don't know you zoom back out. Oh, that's it. Are those images large enough to see, or would you like me to zoom in? Because there's a few different images up there. Are those can you just about zoom in, yeah? Sorry, it just takes a bit of a... Oh, it's gone off again. It just takes a bit of a moment to... is that one in it? Yeah. Select the right one. Okay. So the current application follows a previous refusal in 2021 for the same proposal. However, the current application has been accompanied by additional information in the form of a planning statement, landscape statement and flood risk assessment. I'll just come back out again. Sorry, I'm just trying to zoom back out again. It doesn't come up. I don't know how I did it before. Oh, that's it. Sorry, I'm not very good with technology. So the 2018 approval for change of use to log storage yard included the erection of a covered log store area on a concrete base, and this was to be located in a similar location to the existing building, which is now on site. As set out in paragraph 10.7 of the committee report, the log store approved in 2018 was considered to have a minimal impact associated with a temporary and fluctuating activity, which would not have a detrimental impact on the openness of the green belt and would support a rural business. The structure that has been erected on the concrete base is at least 3 times larger and resembles an industrial unit. In officers' opinion, this is not in the same use as the approved log store associated with the arboricultural depot. The constructed building is significantly larger in terms of footprint and overall height than the approved log store. And the image just up now just shows on the left-hand side the elevations of that approved log store. And on the right-hand side, the image is of the building which members will have seen on site. As such, officers consider the building to amount to inappropriate development. Inappropriate development is by definition harmful to the green belt and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. The applicant has put forward several material considerations which they consider to be very special circumstances. These are the economic benefits, the visual enhancements, and the precedents for existing buildings in the green belt. These are set out in the committee report from paragraph 1033 onwards. The comments of Councillor John Taylor are also noted in respect of the presumed benefits. However, officers do not consider these to outweigh the harm to the green belt. In respect of visual amenity generally, officers consider that the proposal, by virtue of its size and scale, would not respect or enhance the character of the landscape and as such would be contrary to policy LP24 of the local plan. Residential amenity, highway safety and drainage matters are addressed in the report and considered to be acceptable. Notwithstanding this, officers consider that the purpose-built industrial building would have a significantly greater impact on the openness of the green belt than the approved log store. Its separation from the wider site changes the permitted use of the land. The development constitutes inappropriate development and the very special circumstances put forward are not considered to outweigh the harm to the green belt. The recommendation is therefore for refusal as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I ask our first speaker, please, Mike Powell, to come forward? Thank you, Mike. Again, you've got 3 minutes and I'll give you a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, members.
Now.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Michael Powell, planning consultant at Peacock and Smith, and I'm acting as agent for this planning application. I understand that you visited the site this morning and had the opportunity to appreciate the site context, which we believe shows some very important things, just how much care the applicants have taken to make the site tidy, clean and welcoming for local start-up businesses, and the very minimal impact the building has on the surrounding landscape. The planning officer in her report considers that the building has a significantly greater impact on the character and openness of the green belt than the improved log store. The applicants commissioned a landscape architect to make a full assessment of the impact of this building, and it concluded that there would be no discernible impact on the landscape, and there would only be a negligible difference between it and the approved log store. The site's at a valley bottom, very well screened, adjacent to a lot of ad hoc development on the adjacent site that's taken place over time. The applicants have taken great pride in their own site, clearing what was an absolute eyesore of a site when they first took it on, and ensuring it's now tidy, well maintained, and incorporates a lot of planting, vegetation, and renewable energy sources. They've tried to make it reflect what they really needed in the area when they were setting up as a local enterprise, a suitable place for local businesses to grow while also making it sustainable as possible. The current building is just that. It's a neat and tidy space for a local business with potential for growth, still owned and maintained by the applicants. Members will have also seen the existing buildings that have been granted within the applicant's wider site as they've grown their business. These buildings are also within the green belt and were approved planning permission by the council, so we're slightly unclear as to why this one should be treated differently. The applicants have put a lot of time, energy and resources into making this site work, using initiative to diversify during the COVID pandemic to support their own business. If the application's refused, they have the option of going back to the previously approved log store, which would sadly result in a similar sized building, but without the job opportunities and entrepreneurship for the area. In summary, the proposals are to retain a building providing local employment on the site of an approved log store, which has been fully assessed and results in no significant impact on openness. There have been no technical or public objections to this application. The applicants are really passionate about their site, and you'll see the care and effort that's gone into making it sustainable,
please.
Incorporating renewable energy and a lot of new tree planting, enhancing what was previously a very untidy and unsafe piece of land. The applicants want to work with the council to make this a successful place, and the building in question is one part of that. We very much hope you'll take these points into account in reaching a decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Councillor John Taylor, please. John, you've got 5 minutes, 30-second warning as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to come today to support this application. I'm actually very enthusiastic and passionate about it, because what this represents is what we as a council want and need. What we have here is two men who, through their own ambition, their own hard work, their own funds, are creating a circular economy. They are creating a sustainable small business operation. They are providing opportunities for other start-up businesses that can't find anywhere in the rural areas where they can establish and start up their businesses. The businesses that are based there are skilled businesses offering quality, skilled jobs. And these guys have adapted what they're doing. This site is off-grid because the way they're operating is they're doing it in a sustainable way, so they generate their own energy and use that energy to support these other small businesses that are there. Those of you who went on the site visit today, and thank you, Chair, for agreeing to a site visit, because I think that was really important, will have seen the quality of the site and the effort and time has gone into the presentation and the way in which they built and developed this site. They were badly advised by a previous architect that because they had a concrete base agreed, they could build a building on top of it. They didn't know. They were working on the advice they were given. And they were put in a situation where they made a mistake. And they've been honest, they've come forward and they've said, well, they want to fix that. And they want to, sort of do what is right. We have huge ambitions around tackling the climate. These guys are showing how it can be done in businesses. We have huge ambitions to grow our economy, to create new jobs, to create skilled jobs. That's what these guys are doing. That you've seen from the site, those who've been there today, this is adjacent to a series of small industrial units, as the planning consultant mentioned in the Valley Bottom. The community is not objecting to this. I'm fully supporting this. This is the type of development we want to see in Kirklees. We need to be proud of what they're doing and we need to be supporting them. I believe these are exceptional circumstances because what they are creating is what the future of Kirklees should look like. And as councillors, we have an obligation to stand behind that. There are no impact on the green belt, really. You'll have seen that, those of you that went to visit the site today. There's been comments made in the report about the fact that it's been screened and they put fencing up and things like that. They've done that to make it look more presentable. Would we prefer that, or would we prefer what we've seen a lot of business parks across our district, where they're litter strewn and there's cars parked here, there and everywhere, and there's inadequate space. They've made sure that there's adequate space so that when there is vehicles coming to collect the goods that have been made there, that, you know, they can you know, get there, load them up and move away without causing any impact on anybody else. I rarely feel this passionately about planning applications, and it's because what they are doing is so in sync with what we as a council want to achieve. And it's up to us as councillors to put our hands up and be counted today. So yes, technically it may not fit some of our planning policies, but what do we want as our future of Kirklees? And I think it is to be able to have businesses that grow and develop in a sustainable way. It's to have opportunities for small startups in rural areas which we don't have currently. And it's for businesses and business parks to be built and developed in a sustainable way where you have that circular economy where you're off-grid. They're talking now about putting in the guttering so they can collect the water, so they can reuse the water on the site. These guys are passionate about what they do, and they're delivering, and I think it's up to us to deliver as well and support them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So I can now open up to members. I've got Councillor Hall first, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's got a hell of a lot of pluses for it, as this, but there's also a few minuses. A big minus is it's retrospective, which I've been somebody on this council for many, many years who I don't like retrospective. Clearing away trees, bushes, shrubs, etc. on a green belt area, piece of land, that's something that we don't really like. Yeah, I'll accept that it's in a dip, it's not spoiling anybody's view, but when you've got a permission to put something in some kind of a shed, and that's what it's for, specifically for, and then decide to do something else, runs a bit against the grain a bit. Unfortunately, there is a lot of stuff I like about it, but it seems as though things are running away a little bit with this. And what I would like to see for their land is a master plan and for them to work with the council. Obviously, if one agent's told them something that's an untruth. So to save a lot of time, money on their behalf, I will support officer's recommendation, but I would like to see a master plan come in, and then people know what's proposed, what they can do, what they can't do, and I think that would be to everybody's advantage, and the sooner they do that, the better. So I will rest my case on that.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Pinnock, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to support what Councillor Hall has said. And it's quite clear from what Councillor Taylor says that there is a degree of passion involved in this. But I just think they've done it in the wrong order. Yes, there may have been misleading advice given, but there is always one way to decide whether that advice is misleading or not, and that's asked to the planning department and talk to a planning officer about it as to whether something is acceptable or not. And like Councillor Hall, I really strongly object to people putting something up and then asking for permission for it. It's not helpful. And despite the fact that there is a screen next to this building, it is still a rather blatant kind of building in that location. I'm not even sure that the materials and colour and so on are appropriate in such a location, but that ought to be given the opportunity to do it through a proper planning process and decide whether it is acceptable or not. I get that they want to do, the applicants want to do a sustainable operation. That is something we should all be aspiring to. But there is a proper process of dealing with these things, and I feel that they have not gone about it in the way that that should happen. Regrettably, I think that this application needs to be refused, and then the future of the rest, that and the rest of the site, assuming it's all in the same ownership, and as Councillor Hall said, produce a master plan so that the planning service can see what is being proposed for each part of the site, would be much more acceptable and would enable the work to be done in a proper process. So I second the proposal.
Sorry, I just coming in on a couple of points. I agree in terms of the master planning. It's the process for that, and you know, the local plan is up for review, and a call for sites is really the appropriate process. And in terms of the test, exceptional circumstances is what they need to prove when it comes to a local plan, which is a slightly lower test than through a planning application, if you would believe. But that is what we would suggest is the ideal process. And it was just a point of clarification for members when you were raising about master planning, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just to agree with the previous speakers, I concur with Councillor Taylor. This is ideally, if we were looking at what we were wanting to bring forward, this would be the type of thing that we would be wanting to encourage, and the ethos that we would wanting to be encouraged. The issue is that it's not in regulation, and so we're left with two issues here, with two options. We either accept in a bid to regulate what's going on there, or we refuse, because I'm minded to refuse, because what we've got in front of us as well is a change of use principle here, which to my mind would open the site open for any similar use on the site, which then puts this development into the area of a business park. And if you're going to make a business park, or if you're going to allow a business park to be established, then a full set of other considerations needs to come into play. So with that in mind, I'll be voting to go with officers' recommendations on this. Regrettably, I've got to say, and I would encourage the applicants to remain in contact and to push for their vision in the future. And I would hope that we would be able to support that going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. I've got Councillor Lukic, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was very interesting to see the site, and you can definitely get a sense of the vision, and can clearly see why there is so much enthusiasm for that vision. And I think, you know, properly planned would maximise the potential benefits that vision could offer. Unfortunately, what we've sort of got here, you know, poor advice may have occurred, and we can sympathise. That can't change how we look at it necessarily. So what we've ended up with is kind of a piecemeal type of development that isn't part of an overall master plan. I'm glad Councillor Hall brought that up straight away. The site is at... yeah. I find actually that the site is very much visible, because when we left the site and we drove up the valley side, we could see down into that area. You could see the structure and everything, all the screening surrounding it. So there is a definite harm here to the green belt. And I find that the circumstances put forward just don't outweigh that, and to allow this particular development in isolation, as it were, which is the situation we're in, for the reasons put forward, I think would set a precedent that we would not want to see repeated elsewhere. But I will be supporting the officer recommendation for refusal, but I do encourage an ongoing dialogue between the council and the applicants over this site, because I think there is a principle behind it that is a very positive one, and I hope that they're not disheartened if this application is refused at this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gregg, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Taylor as well for suggesting we go on a site visit. I've actually got a little bit of experience of the area, having grown up in Shelley. The area that the site is, we actually saw an overhead shot of the, I know it's green belt, or it's classed as green belt. The footprint of the building, it actually wasn't very green. It's an industrial area. Always had, as long as my lifetime, that area down there has been an industrial area. So it isn't something that is going to irate a lot of residents locally. There are a lot of people in the area who, there's nobody put an application in against this. The local councillor is even for it. So I think I appreciate the work the council officers have done. I think you're following the advice of the law on this, that somebody has actually, maybe not gone about things the way they should, and we have to acknowledge that that's probably been the case. It's really good for somebody to come and be honest and admit they made a mistake and that things may have been done differently. But what I would urge today is that we could do we could do something really good here. This social value policy that the council have got, we could actually look at that as councillors and actually say, let's use our common sense with this. It actually isn't a visible site. It's actually out of the way. I actually used to live in a property that would have overlooked it, and it wouldn't have really changed any view I had. So I'd be actually minded to approve this on the basis that it is actually something that it's not actually something that I don't think is going to cause a great deal of problems locally, but acknowledging the fact that mistakes were made during the application process.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Appreciate the comments. You did really sort of refer to the fact that we're making planning decisions, and regrettable as they may be, that is the job as ourselves as planning officers and yourself as committee members. The Act requires us to make planning decisions based on the development plan or any other material consideration. You referred to the social value policy, and I do understand that Councillor Taylor has referred to that also. That's a council document. It's not an adopted planning document. So if members were to be minded to approve, it would be the reasoning for that in terms of the green belt. And it was just to make that point abundantly clear. Just you're making decisions in accordance with the Act, in accordance with the approved development plan.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to comment? Can I just say that it was so worthwhile, this site visit this morning, so that we could all have a proper look. I'm sorry that this planning application is the wrong way around. I don't like to see the word retrospective in a planning application, and I get worried that we will be opening up the floodgates. Councillor Gregg, you said that it was out of the way. I don't think that's the right wording, and that is strong enough just for us to think about supporting this. I have actually had 4 members speaking, and they've all mentioned officer recommendation of refusal. So again, for transparency, does someone want to move refusal and second it? Councillor Hall move refusal. Seconded. Councillor Pinnock. Are we okay to move to the vote then for refusal? Thank you.
So you're voting on the officer's recommendation to refuse. Councillor Dadd?
Abstain.
Councillor Gregg?
Against.
Councillor Hall?
For.
Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Lukic?
For.
Councillor Pervez?
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Sheard.
Against.
Councillor Stephen.
Abstain.
Councillor Lowe.
For refusal.
That's 6 votes for, 2 against and 2 abstentions. So that's carried.
That's carried. Thank you. Would anybody like a 5-minute comfort break, or are you okay to carry on? Yes, please. 5-minute comfort break? 5 minutes, quick. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to agenda item number 12, planning application 2022/90825, erection of single-storey extension with integral garage and raised roof heights at 1 Brunswick Street, Westborough, Dewsbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So members visited the site this morning. I don't think you'll be able to see my cursor, but it's the end terrace property here I'm pointing at. The application site contains the end terrace dwelling, as I've just said, which has previously been extended to the front, side and rear. And some images here just showing the dwelling as existing. Permission is sought for the erection of a single-storey front extension, garage and raising of the roof over the existing single-storey side extension, as shown on the slide. Up now. As you'll see from the plan that's up there, the elevations there are labelled differently to the way that the report is worded. And I'll just refer you to paragraph 2.3 of the committee report. The applicant has constructed an extension on the southern elevation, which is this elevation here. And they've done that under the larger home notification scheme of Class A of the General Permitted Development Order. So that is established as the rear elevation because that scheme relates to rear extensions only. So this is an identical proposal to one which was recently refused, and the reasons for refusal are set out in the report. Due to the size and location of the proposed single-storey front extension and garage extension, they're not considered to result in subservient additions to the host property and would appear prominent and visible within the street scene. The alteration to increase the height of the roof of the existing single-storey extension to the side would have a negligible impact on the appearance of the dwelling. Floor plans here just demonstrate the projection of the front extension and the location of the garage in relation to that front extension. The single-storey front extension would be built along the shared boundary with the adjoining dwelling and would result in an overbearing impact on the neighbour's bay window. It would also result in overshadowing in the earlier part of the day. In addition, due to the height of the proposed garage and difference in ground levels, officers consider that this would also have an oppressive and overbearing impact on that adjoining property, number 3. There would be no detrimental impact on highway safety as a result of the proposals. To conclude, the proposals are considered to have a significant detrimental impact on visual and residential amenity, and refusal is recommended as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Abid Salim, please? You have 3 minutes to speak and I will give you a 30-second warning. And your time starts now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and respected members. I ask for your support today with regards to my application for the following reasons. This application is supported by my neighbours at number 3, and there's been no objections or opposition raised by them or any concerns. Highways also have no concerns raised regarding the development. My house is an end terrace property and I'm requesting a single-storey extension at the rear of my property. There has been some ambiguity as to what is the front and rear, but myself and all my neighbours, since we have lived there, it is always considered the rear of the property. There are existing 3-metre single and 2-storey extensions at the same line of terrace at the rear of the property, the same side that I am requesting. The floor levels of my proposed extension is 2 metres below the road level, so will not have any visual impact or any on any amenity for their neighbouring properties. It will be in keeping with the surrounding properties in terms of design and materials used. The proposal will enhance the property and the street scene. It satisfies conditions of privacy. There is no impact on the rights of privacy as there are no windows looking at the direction of any adjoining property. In terms of overbearing effects, the proposal is a single-storey extension and will have no overbearing effects. The extension on the neighbouring house, again, I mentioned, is a double-storey, which has already been approved. The right to light is not disturbed to the neighbouring property, and they will continue to benefit from natural light. The proposal has no impact on any environmental concerns, including noise, air quality, odour or light. The proposal is away from a busy road and includes an area of secure parking. The proposal, if approved, will offer the current and future occupants a level of comfortable living. It's, in my opinion, a sustainable development in terms of it will allow my family to grow and continue to live in an area I have grown up in. As you know, the cost of living and cost of buying a new house outweighs the cost of staying at my current residence. Myself, I am a serving police officer and I've lived in that area for a number of years. My vehicle has been subject and continues to be subjected to damage as a consequence. The building of a garage will prevent that future damage from occurring. Presently, I have to park away from my home address to prevent my vehicle from being damaged. This obviously affects my amenities of enjoying myself living at the address. That's all, and I hope me being here today and my application merits your support. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now open up to members. Anybody? Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chair. Just at the start of the presentation, I think the officers said that it was an identical application to one that was already refused. Just a bit of clarity. Has the applicant had the opportunity to maybe sit with officers and maybe look at, you know, making any changes before submitting an identical application and had the opportunity to look at what may have been acceptable? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, the applicant was given the opportunity to amend, well, the officers suggested amendments to the applicant prior to submission of this current application, but they submitted the identical proposal to what was previously refused.
Anyone else want to speak? Councillor Pervez, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is my ward and I really know the area really well. The thing is, in some of our Asian culture and there's 3 to 4 generations living in one property. So I don't think this should get refused. I think it should get approved.
Thank you. Councillor Lawson, please.
Thank you, Chair. This has come through as an identical. We've heard that there was a chance given to consider officers' recommendations for alterations. Having had no material change in the application, I ask that we go to the vote to accept officers' recommendations rather than try and modify it here. We've got an application in front of us. It's the same as the last one that got refused. So I'll move that we accept officers' recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
So are you wanting to move for refusal? Do I
Yes,
have
Chair.
a seconder to Councillor Lawton? Councillor Lukic, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second it because I agree with all the reasons put forward by officers for refusal and the fact that it's identical to the previous application that was refused also.
Thank you. So I have a proposer to refuse and a seconder. People happy to move to the vote? Or Councillor Pinnock, sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree with that. And in particular, it seems to me that the garage rather sticks out as well as the extension. And I think that because the extension that the house already has on what, because of the terms under which the extension was granted, makes up the rear of the house, we are talking about the front of the house, and under those circumstances there are slightly different considerations apply. And I think that and particularly given that it's already been refused once, I don't think we have any choice but to refuse it again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gregg, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just appreciate what's been said about the proposal being submitted after it was refused last time with no changes. However, two of the local councillors are presumably advocating it to be approved or happy for it to be approved, and there's not been any responses against the application from the local residents. My question to the Chair was, I think the applicant indicated he did want to add something, and would that be possible? No? Okay. That was all it was. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm sorry they can't come back in. So I have Councillor Lawson, who has moved officer recommendation for refusal, and Councillor Lukic has seconded that. Councillor Bavay, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. Instead of refusing, could we defer this and see if the applicant can work with the officers to get some of these changes and work with them?
Is that something that you can do?
Through you, Chair, if there are amendments that would be considered, possibly the removal of the garage and the reduction of the single-storey front extension, then, you know, members could defer it, whether that would be acceptable and whether we could find an acceptable solution. But it's how long is a piece of string? It's open-ended as to terms of whether we'd find that acceptable, but that's open to members to defer.
Councillor Sheard?
If you're moving to defer, I think I'd second that. I think it would be beneficial to have the applicant and officers work together, and seeing as that the two councillors for the ward are in approval, that there's no issues with it, and that residents, again, don't have any objections, I think it'd be beneficial to have the applicant and officers also work together to come to some sort of agreement. So I would second a deferral if someone's motioning it.
Councillor Dadd?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just some clarity, or I don't know if we can put conditions on if something was to be deferred today, that the applicant is clear that the deferral is for them to be given the opportunity to work with officers, and if an identical application was to come back for a third time, would there be a need for it to come to the committee, or would it just get rejected and refused by officers? So if there were no amendments, if a deferral was to be approved, if there were no amendments to an application, just the process behind how that, would that then come back to committee, or what would be the process? Just a bit of clarity on that, because I don't want it to be how long's a piece of string and how long will things keep getting, you know, coming back and forth. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I mean, if committee services do want to come in terms of, but what I would envisage is that members could defer for the applicant to get one opportunity, for example, to provide appropriate amendments that would be in accordance with the local plan and SPD. In terms of process, it wouldn't get delegated to officers, because if members are deferring it, it would have to come back to members for members to make that decision, and any amended plans would come back and an updated report brought forward to members.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Hall, please.
Thanks, Chair. Right, we've got some areas in Etmondwhite which we get applications a bit similar to this. We'll go and talk to them, and it's purely because the Asian families have 2-3 generations inside living together. But I would support a deferment, but I'd make it very, very plain that there's got to be movement, because we're not playing a game of tennis here. You know, it's not coming back every month. So, on the proviso that there would be some movement, I would support a deferment.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Stevens, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions or sound a few things out so I'm clear, and just to stop me voting in a way that would mean that we get something back that actually we should have just made a decision on today. Can I double check whether when proposals were put to the applicants, was that for the removal of the garage completely? Is there no way of getting a garage? Because from the speaker, it did sound like that is an important part of the development. But if there is no way of getting a garage on this property, then it kind of feels like that's a bit of a done deal. Also, I think I'm right in saying that even though the neighbours at number 3 aren't objecting, I think we've definitely had this before where it said it's not about the people who live there at the minute, it's future residents. And also I do sympathise with anybody who wants to make the house bigger. It is a much easier prospect at the minute than moving house, but I'm pretty sure that's not something we can discuss as a planning committee as a material consideration. I just wanted to sound all of that out to make sure I'm right in my head with all of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm that the amendments suggested to the applicant prior to this current application coming back in were to remove the garage, reduce the size of the extension to the front. So that is what we have already suggested, yeah. And in terms of the amenity issue, yes, we do have to consider the amenity of future occupiers.
Thank you, members. Right, I had first a proposal to support officer recommendation for refusal, and that was from Councillor Lawson, and that was seconded by Councillor Lukic. So we will go to the vote first for refusal.
Councillor Dowd?
Against.
Councillor Gregg?
Abstain.
Councillor Hall? Councillor Lawson?
For.
Councillor Lukic?
For.
Councillor Pervez?
Against.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Sheard?
Against.
Councillor Stephen?
For.
Councillor Lowe?
Abstain.
That's an equality of votes, so you get a casting vote as chair. So you can.
Thank you, members.
But
I will move.
sorry, Chair. Does abstaining count as casting a vote?
There were 4 against.
No.
I've now got to swing.
For, and 4 against. So
Yeah, and one.
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
I
so
misunderstood.
Yes, decide it.
I'm for refusal on
for
this
refusal.
application.
Right, so that's 5 votes for refusal, 4 against. So
Thank you, members.
That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
Can you work with the applicant?
That's not true. I'm not engaging. Do you want me to come back?
Can I ask that you contact the planning committee and go through the right amendments? Yeah, that's fine, sir. If you want to go back to the planning department, then please do. Members, can we please? Thank you, Julia, for confirming that. It's much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, members. Thank you, members. Agenda item number 13 is planning application 2020/93777. Outline application for erection of residential development east of Mill Lane and Heaton Grange, Hanging Eaton, Batley. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Richard Gilbert, Senior Planner in the Majors and Minerals Planning Team. Item 13 on the agenda is application 2020-93777. The application is outlined with access to the site being a consideration. Consequently, matters relating to layout, scale, appearance and landscaping remain reserved and subject to future submission. The proposed residential development numbers up to 18 dwelling houses on non-allocated land. The proposal therefore falls under the definition of being a windfall site, as it is not allocated in the local plan. In respect of publicity, the application has been advertised in accordance with the requirements of the Development Management Procedure Order, and 7 representations have been received, which have been discussed in detail within the report to committee. The site is located south of Batley Centre in Hanging Heaton. It is east of the railway line and north of Bromley Road. The site is to be accessed from the existing residential cul-de-sac of Heaton Grange that was permitted in 1998. To the north is a former gasworks turned industrial estate called Batley Business Park, accessed from Grange Road. The site was once an ancillary piece of land serving the gasworks. As regards the principal matter of access, the applicant has confirmed that the proposed gradient into the site is 1 in 12. The gradient is considered too steep for the carriageway to be shared use, which is a road type without a footway. The layout has since been amended to include a 2-metre wide footway up to the turning head. An 18-metre forward visibility splay is also shown to the 90-degree bend just west of the access point into the site. Following review of the revised access layout, Highways Development Management have confirmed that the access arrangement provides acceptable levels of forward visibility despite the access's topographical challenges. The indicative landscaping plan on this slide highlights how a buffer zone to the industrial estate will be created that will function with a dual purpose of providing public open space and biodiversity improvement area across the northern boundary. Members should be aware of the commentary set out within Section 5 of the committee report regarding the need to agree a deed of variation to an historic Section 106 agreement from 1998. The plan on this slide presents an extract from the 1998 agreement with the original buffer area outlined in orange on the northern side of the site. The area in the centre of the plan constitutes the residential estate of Heaton Grange, which was approved in 1998 and is consequently tied to the 1998 legal agreement. The areas on the left and right of the plan were required through the agreement to pay a bond to the council so that the orange buffer area was taken on and maintained by the council as public open space. The eastern area on the right-hand side of the plan has since been developed as a residential street forming Greenhill Court. No bond was taken for this development, despite Greenhill Court being granted planning permission in 2002. Satellite imagery subsequently evidences that Greenhill Court was developed and occupied by June 2009, with the buffer zone not having been developed, nor a bond being paid to the council to take on responsibility for the buffer area. The outline application under assessment at this committee meeting includes the western parcel of black hashed land, as well as the entire buffer zone. Given that the historic legal agreement has not been complied with, but has also not been enforced, officers sought counsel opinion from Mark Howell at King's Chambers, who provided formal advice in May 2021. The conclusion of this advice was a recommendation to proceed with a deed of variation due to the highly problematic nature of deciding the application under historic planning policy requirements, which are out of date and which have not been complied with. Council further justified that the application should be decided on current planning policy and should be based on current evidence and information to make the proposal acceptable in planning terms. This stance has been adopted by officers in their assessment of the application in section 10 of the committee report, as well as in the officer recommendation to committee. As can be seen in the indicative public open space boundary plan, the landscape buffer would be amended to reflect the indicative layout, though it is unclear as to why this landscape buffer was required under the 1998 permission. It is presumed it was designed for the purpose of providing satisfactory separation distances between the business park and the residential development, so as to ensure satisfactory sound levels due to the uses prevalent on the business park in the late 1990s. Kirklees environmental health officers have agreed with the conclusions made in respect of the noise impact assessment submitted with the modern scheme, whereby the contemporary use of the business park is no longer considered a source of significant noise. Therefore, the requirement for a buffer zone of 30 metres in depth is no longer considered required. As such, the incursion of plots 8, 9, 10 and 11 into the 1998 buffer zone is recommended as acceptable to committee. The new buffer would be 12 metres in depth for a distance of 55 metres between plots 8 and 9, and it would also receive incursion from the proposed turning head of the indicative highway layout. Irrespectively, a layout would be determined at reserve matters stage. However, officers would seek to limit further erosion of the buffer zone through securing the area outlined in green on the slide via the deed of variation. Lastly, the planning contributions that have been agreed in principle with the applicants include £16,647 towards public open space, £10,000 for a bus stop improvement, £9,207 for bus-only metro cards to promote the use of public transport, 20% on-site affordable housing units, which would total 4 under the current site layout and yield, as well as a biodiversity contribution of £4,830. Members should be aware that the penultimate paragraph of the committee update is incorrect. It was expressed that a 10% biodiversity net gain could be retrospectively required at reserve matters stage. However, this approach would not be sound in planning law terms. Irrespectively, this factual correction does not affect the premise of whether a defined figure for biodiversity should be required at the outline stage under this application. The officer recommendation reflects a preference for the defined figure, and the officer recommendation is to approve the application subject to agreeing the conditions listed in section 12 of the report, as well as to secure a section 106 agreement for the contributions aforementioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask Nick Willock, please? Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak, Nick, and I will give you a 30-second warning. Your time starts now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee. My name is Nick Willock, planning consultant for the applicant. Could I firstly say that the issues to do with the historic Section 106 agreement, it's not malicious on the part of the landowner. Mistakes have been made on both sides, the council and the applicant, and it relates to something that happened 25 years ago. We've sat down with the council's solicitor and agreed a solution to this. So I just wanted to make clear that there is no maliciousness behind, you know, things that have happened in the past in terms of why open space wasn't provided, etc. So this is an infill site in a sustainable location. It's within walking distance of Batley Town Centre, regular bus services and the train station. And unallocated sites of low environmental value like this are crucially important for the council's housing and land supply, because they contribute towards the target of 4,500 windfall homes needed over the planned period, and as such help to prevent greenbelt land being needed in the future. The applicant's team have liaised closely with your officers throughout this case, and as I said, we work with your planning and landscape officers and the solicitor to resolve these historic issues with the Section 106 agreement. So the applicants agreed to provide 3/4 of an acre of public open space, that's 3,100 square metres, plus a contribution financially towards improving the existing playground. And the on-site open space provision is actually a lot better than what was proposed before anyway. We've discussed this at length with your landscape team, and we've agreed to provide everything they've asked for. So that's amenity grassland, wildflower meadows, native hedgerows, additional children's play features, and new footpaths connecting to the existing play area and Green Hill Crescent, if it's possible to show the layout again. So, and despite the application being in outline form, we've also agreed, because of the historic Section 106 issues, the specified area and design of the open space will be fixed at this stage as part of the Section 106 agreement. So it's not going to be a reserve matter, that will be fixed. Furthermore, planning permission has been granted on this site previously, and so the principle of development for housing has already been established on what is essentially infill land. The scheme before you is a good quality development with considerable public benefits in terms of on-site affordable housing, biodiversity and open space provision, together with the off-site sustainable transport, open space and biodiversity financial contributions.
30 seconds.
I'd like to thank Mr Gilbert for accelerating this case. It's been in the system for a long time. I've been on this case 2.5 years. I'm struggling to believe that, but that's what it is. So we'd like to endorse the officer's recommendation to grant outline planning permission in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I've got Councillor Hall, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, known this area just about 60 odd years. It is a mess. There's no two ways about it. I've just looked at it again on Google Maps and just to make sure that it is a mess, and yes, it is still a mess. So with a proposal like this, I think we'd be foolish to refuse it. We've got the 20% housing, there's public open space, etc., kids' play areas. It's an ideal place for Batley Town Centre, not far from Bradford Road. All in all, I think it's a damn good application, so I would certainly move it.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Lukic, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask for the layout to be displayed again, please? Thank you. Thank you. So I understand this is indicative with respect to layout, but actually what the point I need to raise is about access, which is for determination now. I am slightly concerned, unless I'm missing something. First of all, can I just check, is there might be actually, is there that access on directly onto Mill Lane, is that a direct access onto Mill Lane in the top left corner, and is that for pedestrians and or cycles, or is there no access to there?
Through you, Chair. That pedestrian access has actually been removed from the main site plan. If I show it it's at the bottom of the slideshow. I thought that question might arise, and you can see that it's been removed here. It's just that's a swept layout plan that we received, and their contractor will have only had the old plan to use when overlaying the highway layout. However, that pedestrian access, as you can see, onto Mill Lane is removed.
Okay, with that confirmed, can I ask why that's been removed? Because I am quite concerned about the active travel aspect here with access, because if you're trying to get into Batley and you're walking, you don't want to be walking up the hill to go back down the hill. And, you know, that will sort of double your walking distance to the railway station and so on. Also, this site is close to the proposed Dewsbury to Batley to Chidswell active travel corridor. And I think there should be an opportunity here to maximise the active travel opportunities. And I think this is going to be a car-centric development without that access. So could I seek some further comment, please?
You can. Would you like to come in? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So the reason it was removed was because there's no footway on the eastern side of Mill Lane. And then, so crossing over Mill Lane would be problematic. There's also a significant retaining wall there that you'd have to then take out and then rebuild to put a footway on there, which is beyond the scope of that development to fund. There's also, because it would be within a partition, you would then be having a section where you couldn't see what traffic is coming either way, and it would also have no natural surveillance, so there were fear of crime issues that were raised by the designing out crime officer. So that was the rationale for why it was removed.
Thank you. Councillor Luke, is that again?
Thank you, Chair. I really would like to think there is a solution to that. But I take it that's been fully considered. I mean, I would personally prefer to defer it to look if there is an option there, because this is backwards looking in terms of its car centricity, and there is a potential for that to benefit all the other residents in the wider neighbourhood, to be able to access the active travel corridor, to access the railway station, and Batley Town Centre without using the cars, without having to walk uphill and back down. I think this is a particularly sensitive topography that would benefit from an access at that side. And access is a matter to be determined here. So I would like, I mean, members might not agree with me, but I would like to move deferral for access, pedestrian cycle access directly onto Mill Lane, to be re-evaluated in consultation with Highways Development Management as to whether there is any possible solution to that.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Chair. Just to clarify that this is an outline application for access, and that's to do with highways access, with all other matters reserved, as in layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. So those are details that would be consumed within the reserved matters application. When it comes to an outline application for access, it's to do with the highways. So these are matters in terms of the layout and scale that would be covered by a reserved matters application should members be minded to approve.
Right, okay. Any more comments, members? I've had one proposer for 4 and I've had one for deferral.
He's removed it.
You've withdrawn that referral.
Yeah,
that's what you've withdrawn.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay. Councillor Pinnock, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would be delighted to second Councillor Hall's proposal because I think this, notwithstanding the issue that Councillor Lukic has brought up, which I totally sympathise with, but the fact is there isn't a footpath on that side of Mill Lane, which is a bit short-sighted, really, but that's how it is, you know. So there we are. No, I think this is a really good opportunity, and I'm also delighted to hear the close working relationship that has existed between the applicants and the officers. Would it that some other people would think about that as well? But that's yes. There you are. I better shut up now, otherwise.
Anyone else want to speak? Can I just say, like Councillor Hall, I know the area very well. Steve and I grew up together, obviously. And it'll be good to see something positive happening on this piece of land. When do I mention solar panels?
Whenever you like.
Whenever you like. I'd just like to encourage more developers looking at, just for noting.
Yeah, for the record,
yeah. Okay.
Reserve
Thank you very much.
matters, outline
Okay.
application.
Right. So I have Councillor Hall proposing 4 and Councillor Pinnock seconding. Are we okay to move to the vote? Thank you.
So you're voting on approval in line with the officer's recommendation in the report and the update. Thank you. Councillor Dadd.
4.
Councillor Gregg.
4.
Councillor Hall. Councillor Lawson.
4.
Councillor Lukic.
4.
Councillor Pervez. 4. Councillor Pinnock.
4.
Councillor Sheard.
4.
Councillor Stephen.
4.
Councillor Lowe.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair. Carried.
Thank you very much. Members, just before I close the meeting, can I just say thank you to all members for your contributions this afternoon. There was some extremely good questions and good debates. So thank you so much. Thank you to planning officers for your excellent work, as always, your excellent reports, and again for answering questions. And can I just say thank you to the IT guys, because you very rarely get a mention, so thank you so much indeed. Thank you, everybody. I will now close the meeting. Safe journey home.
And thank you, Chair, for the way.